When we finished off our kōrero this morning, we were talking about the wānanga, the latest series of wānanga that we've had, and I'm just going to flow neatly from Tina's. One of the reasons I knew Tina would be fantastic at laying some of that groundwork around getting up to the point where we're at. I think marae and hapu and people on the ground are very ready, and actually this is movement on the JMA, because we've already held these wānanga that have asked those core questions that need to sit at the heart of a plan, which is, who are we in relation to our wai? And that, who are we as tangata waiapu, ngā tangata o waiapu. So, and that's a different answer depending on where in the waiapu you are at. And these are the range of some of those answers around who we are as people of the waiapu in different areas. As I mentioned in the last kōrero, there's a lot more wānanga that need to happen from that point, from some of those real core questions around who we are. That's just identifying some of the values that will help to grow the conversation at the next stage, and that conversation needs to include reflecting upon the values, but also looking at each other's values and seeing whether or not we see ourselves as te wiwi Ngāti in the values of Hikurangi Takiwā, and maybe there was something that we missed that they picked up that we can grow, or whether or not we want to keep distinct. Completely distinct in those areas as well. So I think the sharing of those values that came out of that wānanga, the reflection on the wānanga of previous years that have been done by the likes of Ange and Barb and Pia and Tui and our kaumātua as well, Pakeke as well, reflecting on all of those wānanga as well, and looking at how do we pull and weave all of that together to start creating some plans at our level that can then start to be collated to grow something more, a more collective voice around our waiapu. So as I mentioned at the last one, in our last kōrero this morning as well, it's one thing to identify values and to identify things you want to keep an eye on, but having your Ngāti Porou eyes on the water consistently is another thing. So this next kōrero that I'm going to be bridging into is talking about our eyes on the water, our eyes on the waiapu, and what that has been looking like in our most recent program. So this is just one way of looking at one way of us reflecting upon how healthy our wai is in our part of the awa. And so it's not so much for, I guess a part of the wānanga will be what do we want to happen with different parts of our kōrero, because there's some parts of our kōrero we will very much want to be heard at the iwi level or at the national level or at the Māori level, and then there are other parts of our kōrero that we will very much want to keep to ourselves. So a part of those wānanga is discussing how do we either keep it secure or elevate it. We need to talk about, some of those need to be, definitely, what Tina and I believe are both saying is that whatever is being said at that level needs to come from down here. So that needs to be reflected and caught up. Yeah, and I think that's the other part of that also is populating a board or populating a group that can confidently carry those voices forward to the proper channels as well, Uncle, yeah. Kei te pai. So our eyes on the water, and then the next step that we took kind of from looking at our values was to develop a monitoring program and to start to use those values and track those values across different parts of the awa. So we developed a freshwater, which you cannot read at all, a freshwater and marine monitoring program that was picked up by EIT and who have allowed us to deliver it across multiple sites in the awa and train our people up in different ways of looking at well-being, as well as the ways that we have developed ourselves, including cultural values and holistic means of understanding tai ao the well-being of taiao. You can move forward one. So these are our sites that we have been monitoring now since July. We have one here at Ihungia. We have 2 sites at Waipiro. One is a marine site, one is an estuarine site. We have a site here at Mahura Wetlands. We have a site at the Kainanga, at the base of the Kainanga, and we have a site at Maraihara, at Te Uru Kōwhai, just there. So what we do is each week, each Friday, we go to a different site, and then we will cycle around. At the end of 5 weeks, we cycle around back to the first site again, and by the time we've cycled around, and I have a few of our ahunga, or members of the program here, who can attest to the fact that you see a seasonal shift by the time you come around, so we can start to understand the seasonal patterns along our catchment, as well as looking at some of the other things that might be causing shifts or change over time. The course runs from July to April, and so we get around about 5 or 6 visits and rounds of data collection at each site by the time we cycle around. So we do a wide range of different kinds of data collection as well, including estuary, habitat, and marine coastal vulnerability assessments, microplastic assessments on the beach at Waipiro. And the idea really is to seed some of these skill sets in our hapu, and we have members of various hapu from all along these areas, so that they can take those skill sets back into their own takiwā and collect that information. So these are our tools of inquiry. We have 4 different means of collecting every site we go to. The group of around about a dozen of us split into groups, and we will go to we'll use a different form of inquiry each, and then bring all of our information together. We use rapid habitat assessment, which many councils around the country use, which was developed also through Cawthron with Joe Clapcott. Very easy, 10 observational questions about freshwater habitat that enables you to get a sense through observation of how well it's performing. We use the most recent version of the SHMAC kit, and we're doing that through another collaborative work with Niwa, who are trialling their new SHMAC kits with a number of groups, so we're very fortunate and thankful that Niwa chose us to be one of those trials. And we are able to monitor for E. coli, nitrates, phosphates. We also do macroinvertebrate tests, temperature gauges, sediment levels, conductivity, the amount of minerals in the water. So we have a number of different technical tools in that kit that we use, as well as flow rates. So those are 2 tools that we use. We also have 2 tools that are Indigenous tools. One is he tirohanga taiao, or tiro taiao, which is a holistic measure that looks, all of our works are done with mind for the maramataka. What phase of the maramataka are we at? What are our dominant star signs, our dominant star lines that are going above us or passing over us at that time? Every site we've been to, we've had a kōrero from mana whenua to understand the context of the mana whenua of that area that we're monitoring as well, and the significant sites that are in that area. We monitor through tiro taiao, we monitor the cloud formations, we look at the pollens on the breeze, we look at the migrating birds and their direction. We look at everything from rangi to papa. We look at the wetness of the soil, we look at insects that are around us, as well as what we see happening in that area as well. So that's something that our tipuna have always done, but it's now being practiced more across different areas, particularly in Te Moana Nui Akiwa in the Pacific. There are a number of different communities in the Pacific who are undertaking this particular means of collecting information. And then we have our cultural values assessments as well. So a lot of what has been identified in the cultural values wānanga that we ran from last year into this year align with some of this information that we're collecting here, because most tapu identified, they want to know how much land we're losing. Most tapu identified, they want to know whether or not we are, what kind of growth do we have going on around the awa as well. So a lot of that information is being collected here, and then there is some other information that needs to be collected around our mahinga kai practices, around the way that consents are being responded to, around the way that we're using or recreationally using our water as well. So those are the 4 tools of inquiry that we use every Friday at a different point of the awa. It's quite a lot of data that gets collected every week now. The idea is, amongst these kind of measures of, technical and physical ideas around around the well-being of water, as well as our own culturally distinct ideas along the awa of what it should look like, and as well as these very holistic measures that try to take in as much, we start to get an approximation, and I won't say that we're anywhere near saying that we have defined what mauri should mean, if that's a question that we even want to approach, or what waiora exactly is, but it gives us an approximation of what that looks like from our perspective, not just as Ngāti Porou, but as our hapu, as Uepohatu, the nation of Uepohatu, or as Ngāti Porou, or whoever it is that we are in that space. Gives us an opportunity to start to talk about what that looks like for us. And I'm just quickly going to run through what we've found at some of the sites. So we've been around to all of the sites now twice. We are about to head into our 3rd round of data collection. Our first site was Ihungia. That was just the moon on the first day that we started collecting information. So here's Ihungia down here. Really, one of the things that's been quite interesting is that in our tributaries, they carry significant challenges. So, for instance, at Ihungia, we found consistently high conductivity and very high, looked like very high levels of metals and minerals in the water. We took a walk upstream a little bit, and we found about 10 wrecks piled up in the stream, which is not too uncommon in Ngāti Porou. We have many streams that have cars in them holding up banks. And it's an issue that we're going to have to talk about and address at some point, because that's leaching a whole lot of problems into the stream. That said, our streams are also quite resilient. We're still finding some high-level macroinvertebrates there. They're struggling, they're not in huge numbers, but we're still finding them there as well. So you can just see some of so that's one of, there's like a whole, that car dump site kind of goes like that out to about here. Quite a lot of rust coming down into the waterway. Beautiful wetlands nearby. Very low E. coli readings as well, which is interesting. Quite a few of our sites have, relative to the national standards, quite low E. coli readings. Anyway, I'll get into that in a second. Our site 2, Te Kainanga, just at the base of Te Kainanga over there, very indicative of many of our problematic sites along the Waipu. Very difficult to get riparian protection in these kinds of areas because the ground is shifting a lot. The awa is eating away at it quite fast. That was out to here. This is just from one to another, so in a 5-week period. We lost a significant chunk of land out the side of the Kainanga. So when we went back from the first time to the second time, we noticed a big chunk had already been taken out. That's us doing our SHMAT kit testing. And also particularly so when, this has all been planted up by GDC, but not fenced. So it has, quite a few challenges in relation to, one, cows, goats, whoever, getting at all of the everything that was planted there, but also to the shifting ground as well. So it'd be great to start fencing off those areas that we plant, or that GDC plant. Te Uru Kōwhai is our site on the Maraihara Awa. One thing that we did notice a lot of in our first round was significant levels of pollen around the streams, collecting on the rocks. Of course, everybody here probably has it on their cars as well, but it's certainly impacting the streams as well. Again, very low E. coli counts, but baby tuna alvings being found very early on in the season, and decent levels of macroinvertebrates as well. Mahora wetlands. Huge E. coli reading, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because where we were measuring, which we just did it for, to understand, it was kind of an academic exercise to demonstrate that you can have very high levels of E. coli from the bird life that's there, and there are huge levels of birds. So the second time we went back, we noticed just the abundance of life that was in the wetlands there, significant challenges for what could easily be the jewel in the Ngāti Porou ecological crown. Mahora has significant wetland value. It's been noted as a recommended area of protection, Tier 1. So yeah, it's a fascinating, beautiful place that faces a lot of challenges from our roading, from culverts and the lack of fish passage or challenged fish passages into and out of the wetlands, pest species, quite a lot of challenges. There's Tui giving us our kōrero around the place before we started monitoring. And then sites 5 and 6, Waipiro and Upoko stream. So this is actually just last week. We were out there last week doing our coastal vulnerability assessment to check how vulnerable the Waipiro beach is to sea level rise, climate change events and severe storms, and the different kinds of challenges that it may be vulnerable to, and doing microplastic and plastic assessments as well. It's not summer yet, so we're finding some. For the isolation of the place, you would hope it would be even less, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of pollution levels we're finding in the summer. Again, at the early stages of monitoring, these are very indicative of the puddles around the Waipu and along the banks of the Waipu as well, all coated in pollen. But this last time that we went back, quite very abundant tutu in flower, te koka in flower, and fruiting. So a very special place. And just some of the special things that we've found along on our journey as well. Spawning sites in various places, baby tuna, baby bullies, torrent fish. We've had a fantastic session with Graham talking about riparian systems and how to monitor ngahere as well, and how to grow a fully functioning integrated riparian system. Some fat tuna that we found last week in an estuarine environment, which was really interesting. And all of these things keep us really passionate about our little pito, our place that we care and love, and it's about growing that relationship, regrowing that relationship, because it's really sad to hear, especially hearing that kōrero from Tina around the way in which our very colonised land tenure system is now being applied to Wai, and what that could mean for us. Still trying to figure out how we grapple with a colonised land tenure system that doesn't make us cannibalise each other, and to hear that that's now going to be applied into Wai to a new level of mamai is very challenging, is very upsetting to hear. But also one of the important parts of this is to look at if we have our eyes on the water in a catchment-wide sense, if we're looking at what's happening up here and what the impacts are down there, it can help us to also drive some of those decisions that we need to be making collectively and collaboratively along our catchment. So, and growing and normalising the art of observation as well, re-normalising, because our tipuna certainly had it. And then just to finish off, just some of the other work that we've been able to get into. We were supported to be able to attend a GIS mapping wānanga and start to bring some of those skills home and run a wānanga here off the back of it. We were able to look at some of our own old survey maps and layer them over the land to look at the tipuna names and returning some of our tipuna names back to our places. That's been a really helpful tool for that. And just mapping and also entering a lot of our data into that system and creating apps for our field data collection as well. So certainly we've got some wheels in motion, and I think we are ready to move at our level down here. I think definitely if we have these wānanga, get these wānanga going, where we can start to grow that kōrero to the next step and get some plans in place, we'll be ready to crack it. I have every faith we will. So, yeah, we're slowly bringing those two ends together. That's it for me. I won't take too much. Kia ora.